Hi everybody, I'm Dracoya, and today I want to teach you guys some Red NMM on this amazing little practice card, now found on Dracoya.com. My dear friend Francesco Farabi told me about this amazingly easy way to do non-metallic metal. I've never done this technique before, so we'll see how it goes. We're going to do non-metallic metal using the new velvets from Kimera, now found on Dracoya.com. But before we even go into the velvets, we're going to start doing some underpainting. Now on the screen here, we have this really nice cylinder. Why did I bring this up, you ask? Great question. Well, going back to our little armor card, a cylinder is just the barrel chest part of your piece of armor. No matter what you're painting, you're going to want to paint it like a cylinder, so this is a great example. I highlighted a little bit of white on this cylinder so you can see the shape we're going for. We really just want a strong, straight up and down stripe that's going to create that non-metallic metal glow. A real world example is exactly what you see here. I've got a bottle in front of me, it's a cylinder. We're just going to create a really nice stripe this way, and then you can create a reflective highlight that's going to go separately. There we go. That's going to be where this separate reflective highlight is going to be. And then if you were doing it here, you would do a round part and you'd add in a little bit there, but we're going to really focus on just the barrel chest today. I already did this zenithal priming, which is going to make our lives a lot easier. You can see where the highlight placement is. We're just going to create a grayscale transition on this for starts. So we have cloudy sky, bone khaki, black, and white. The Pizarski and Russo are obviously from the artist sets, but the black and white is from the base set that is currently in stock on Dracoya.com. You can do this using just black and white, but I have found that adding these two colors with bone khaki and cloudy sky from the two artist sets make it a lot easier. Next, what we're going to do before we even get started is I'm going to start creating my gradients. I'm going to thin down a little bit pool of my paint. And how are we going to do that, Dracoya? Well, we're going to mix the bone khaki and the black just a little bit to get that lovely gray. And now I have it in between my black and my bone khaki. And then we're going to mix the cloudy sky and the bone khaki, again, to create a nice little stair step of color between those two as well. Then I will start adding the cloudy sky and I'll mix in a little bit more white, maybe a little bit more bone khaki, and we'll have this really nice stair step of color. Yes, you are going to need all of these colors, but the good news is because of this tutorial, all the things that you need are going to be found on Dracoya.com and you can follow along. I'm going to follow the guidelines of what I've already been placed from my zenithal priming. Thankfully, because I did it from an angle, I can see everywhere that there's going to be some light. So I'm going to take that middle bone khaki black mix and I'm going to start adding them on the left side where I know there's going to be some added shadows. It's going to take a few rounds, so I'm not too worried. We can just take our time today. Notice how I'm lifting the brush up and stroking down. So because the light is going to have the cylinder placement where you're going to have basically a big stripe down the middle, I really want my brush strokes to all go the same way. This is something I've learned recently from another painter, is if you want to create movement in your piece, try to keep your brush strokes all going the same way, up and down or side to side, but don't mix the two. Testing my paint out, making sure I've got a nice consistency. I'm pretty happy with that. And so now I'm gonna just bump up that color. All we're doing is grayscale. And this is gonna be that mix of cloudy sky and bone khaki that I'm going to add to the bottom because I already know a big amount of that highlight from my zenithal priming was there. The most challenging part about this entire process is probably just wet blending from one color to another, but I have made a couple of different videos on that. Wet blending happens to be my personal favorite technique. And I think it is a technique that every new painter should learn, if nothing else. Now I'm going to go back to that bone khaki black mix, and wet blending, I'm going to bring it back to that part we're working on right now. And again, I'm going to grab my brush and start bringing it all the same way, picking it up in between strokes. I'm not going to go back and forth because then you're just moving paint back and forth across your model, and no one wants that. That's not helping anybody. If you do find that you're pushing paint back and forth, or maybe you're picking up paint where you placed it down, that's a sign that you need to pause, let that dry a little, and move on to a different section. So we're going to be working back and forth between the top section and the bottom section today. Make sure you check your paints along the way for the right consistency. You'll notice that this section right here, I already went into the white and the cloudy sky highlight because that top section had a lot more white from my zenithal priming. So I already know that where the light source is coming in, it's gonna have a lot more light on the upper chest region than the lower chest. The patch on his chest is going to block a good strip of light, so we're going to blend that into our shadows, but we're going to stop and make sure that there's a big contrast right there underneath that. I have found that I need a different shadow, so I'm going to mix something even darker, but that's still in between the bone khaki and black. You can see me mixing it in here. Again, you can follow along. All of these supplies are found on Dracoya.com. And that wonderful new color that we created, that's a little bit of a darker shadow, we're going to place that in to these areas right here because we want shadow there, but I don't want to use all black. In fact, you're going to use as little pure black and pure white as possible. Pure black and pure white are going to be the last things that you put on. It's going to be the very final highlight, the tip of the iceberg. Same thing with the dark. It's going to be the deepest recesses. Most of the model is not going to need it. We're just going to go back and forth from the highlight and the shadow. Blend this in here. I want to make sure that the line underneath the patch on his chest is a little bit fuzzy. We don't want it to be a stark contrast. Adding in a little bit of the mid-tone between that shadow and the highlight. Again, all going the same direction. Nice and easy, taking our time, wet blending it back and forth. After a few passes at this, you can see the transition is nice and subtle. Everything is well blended together. It has a lovely gradient, but it's not such a stark contrast where it goes from one thing to the other quickly. And that's the secret to wet blending, is you really want to make sure that there's this middle area where it goes back and forth and it mixes as two colors between the two, and it's not a stark contrast. I did another video on this, and I can link it below in case you need to go back and review some fundamentals. But we're gonna try this out, this brand new non-metallic metal. I've never done a grayscale challenge before, so we'll see how it goes. In all the other non-metallic metals with velvets, we've just gone ahead and used them as you would regular paint. They work fantastically well. Love the velvets. But today, let's see if we can't try to use them in a different way, because I'm all about trying new things here on this channel. Even though this space is very small, we still want to make sure that there is some highlight here. We also want to make sure that it lines up. So even though there's this strip in the middle of his torso that a lot of you would think, oh, well, maybe this will break up how the light is placed. Not really. You're still going to have a very clear cylinder highlight from top to bottom. And then you'll have another reflective highlight on the side right here. On the bottom part of his torso, the only reason we don't have a solid stripe going from top to bottom is specifically because on the bottom part, next to his chest, it's going to have this curved inside. In fact, let me show you what I mean. I've got this amazing drawing that I made myself. I know, thank you. Comment down below if you love it. So the top part here is supposed to be his chest, and then you have this curvature, and at the very bottom, you're going to see something that's going to be closer to his waist. So, and then you've got the light source coming in from above. That light source coming in from above means that your highest highlights are going to be where I've pointed the 2 green arrows. That's going to be at the very top part of his chest and also at the very bottom of the metal closer to his waist. But you know where it's not going to be? On that curvature in the middle. I actually added this little purple X and the purple arrow so you can see, because there's that incline, the light isn't going to be placed vibrantly there. You're just gonna have a nice shadow, which is what you really want for non-metallic metal. You wanna make sure you have a good amount of shadow so that you can see your highlight coming through. Speaking of, I wanna make sure my left side is dark enough. So we're gonna slowly add a dark gradient going from the top to the bottom, just a little bit of the highlight at the top. It's a little bit of a challenge when you wet blend to actual black or stark white, but I'm gonna show you a really great way to check it. Bam! We have grayscale. All I did was change my camera to grayscale. You can do this using your phone. You shouldn't even need to download anything. Almost all phones have the capabilities to take a picture, and then you can see where your grayscale is. So I'm looking at mine, and you know what I've noticed? I did not put in enough contrast. There's a lot of white here, and I love what the highlights look like, but if I really want my highlights to pop, I need to add a little bit of darkness to my shadows and in a couple of different places as well. When you're first learning to paint non-metallic metal, this is the #1 way that I see a lot of people make a mistake. They're not adding enough shadow. You think non-metallic metal, well, we want it to be shiny, so we want it to be bright. We want to make sure we add plenty of highlights, but it's a little counterintuitive. You really need that shadow to make the highlights pop, and without enough of that shadow, it's really not going to look like non-metallic metal at all. It'll look kind of muddled or like it's all just uniform and this one vibrant color. But I want to add darkness. So grayscale, really good way to check yourself and make sure you have a good amount of contrast. Even at the top here, I know that most of my highlight is going to be right there, but I want to add a little bit of a darker tone right next to that highest highlight point, just so that I can make that highest highlight point really pop. It doesn't need to be too dark. I'm not even going into my darker colors, as you can see, you're following along in my palette. I'm just adding something more in that mid-tone to calm down the highest highlights. This is a really good way of making your highlights pop, adding in a little bit of the shadow. I wouldn't even need to add in shadow right here if it wasn't for this small little ridge on the armor itself. Most of the time when I paint models, all the armor nowadays has little ridges, little designs, little pop-outs, a lion's head or dolphin's brain or some hodgepodge of the two. You know what I mean. So I find that this armor card is great to practice on because it's a little bit more realistic to a lot of the models that I'm finding. Plus, I'd much rather ruin a $10 or a $15 card than a $65 model, wouldn't you? So making sure you add in a little bit of that shadow just to give it a pop. We are going to take a black and just line that area right there so it breaks up the sections. I wouldn't need to do this if there wasn't this strip in the middle, but because there is, we're going to do it. Respect the model. We're going to do one more look over to make sure everything's placed correctly, but I'm pretty happy with this. We added some shadows in the right places, and now I have a really nice looking gradient all throughout my model. I only did grayscale, and so now's the time to do the fun part. Let's add some color. I've never done this before with the velvets, so we're going to put red and alizarin crimson on my palette right here. Let's see how it goes. Okay, we're just going to take a little bit of that red velvet and put it over the gradient that we spent the last half hour creating. A word to the wise, guys, make sure your paints are dry before you attempt to do this. Walk away, grab some water, stand up, do a jumping jack, come back. Because if it's not dry, you're in for trouble. This is actually going on really nicely. It's respecting the layout of the highlights that I had. And so far, everything doesn't look uniform. I think I could actually go a little bit harder with the velvet. Yeah. There we go. We're just gonna add more. Oh, look at that, guys. You see how it doesn't change? It changes according to what I put behind it, but it doesn't cover it up. Hey, this is nice. Even on the shadow side. I added the crimson to my palette, but I'm not sure I'm gonna need it. I think a few passes of just using the velvet red is gonna get me to where I want. I'm gonna go even harder on the velvets, even thicker. Let's just see. Let's mess it up. Nope. Even then, you've got a really nice shadow. Wow, this is so easy. So I got a bangin' non-metallic metal red, and all I had to do was place a black and white gradient. Yeah, I'll take it. This is super easy. Way to make my life so easy and speed up this process. You can add a few layers of the red if you want it to be a little bit more vibrant. Gaming Trend came out with an article that named the Velvets their editor's pick of 2026. We are very excited about this. I can add the link to this article below. But if you haven't picked up the Velvets yet and you are in the United States, go to Dracoya.com. I am the US distributor for all things Kimera, bringing you all of that amazing paint goodness. And if you want to follow along, all the supplies are going to be on Dracoya.com. I don't know about what you guys think. I'd love to hear your comments below. Give me some feedback. Would this be a technique that you're interested in, or would you like to see the full process for non-metallic metal red using just the colors and not doing a grayscale gradient? Do you want to see the difference between the two? What are your options? What does it look like? Did this video help you? Do you still have questions? Comment down below. Like, comment, subscribe. And as always, guys, paint bravely, shop Dracoya.com.